Hey, hey, mic check. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, GM.
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, let me just share the space out real quick. Just give me a couple minutes here. Get some people up in this space. I think yeah, JP is actually in like a huge crypto town hall space. There's like 4,000 people in it, so he's probably sucking up a lot of the people that would probably be in this space anyway. But still run it. I'm like hosting on two different computers right now, so hopefully everything goes okay.
Yeah, no worries at all. We'll also share it around now.
And there's no music either. Normally, when you hop in, there's like waiting room music where we can just kind of hang out to for a second.
Yeah. I think the music stops when you unmute your mic, which is just yeah,
I never
not.
did, and it just stopped for me.
Mm.
It like unmuted, like I don't know. That's Twitter Spaces for you.
If you want, I could sing. Would that be helpful?
Are you a singer? Actually,
No.
it's kind of funny because like I don't know if you know Chad. He's got if you look him up on YouTube, he's got just like covers, like a bunch of covers. He like plays piano and sings. He's actually really good.
Cool. Yeah, no. I think if we want people to tune in, then maybe we shouldn't get me singing on the mic. If we want people to tune out, we want to lose people real quick. I'll take hold. Sing a little Titanic or something. Get the people going.
Cool,
Maybe
cool.
a little
Well,
Houdini, Dua Lipa.
yeah, you guys need to license that song.
Yeah, it was super nice of her to come on as a sponsor. KOL co-authored the song with her.
Yeah. Well, just wait until she drops her Grifty meme coin, and then you can hop in there.
Yeah, yeah, can't wait for her next hit. Cross-chain interoperability.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's get started. You want to do a quick intro first? Introduce yourself and Houdini.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Yeah, so my name is Lou. I'm part of the core team at Houdini Swap. We are a cross-chain liquidity aggregator with a unique set of privacy features. We launched pretty close to 2 years ago and started with the mission of achieving on-chain privacy in a compliant way. So being able to break the link between sender and receiver, whether it's for payroll or just like paying a friend or trading with a new wallet or whatever your use case was, we wanted to enable privacy in a way that that won't get you in trouble and that is compliant with the law. We set out to achieve that mission about 2 years ago, and then fast forward to now, we've become I'd argue to say the leader, if not one of the leaders in cross-chain privacy. We do in aggregate about $1 billion annually in volume on our platform. We've got an amazing community with our lock token. It's an ERC20 token, and it enables almost like a transfer of value from the platform to the token holders. We've got a staking program and a couple other utilities built in. Um, why we're on this call and why we're super excited to be here is we are coming out with a kind of like what we're calling V3. So it's the next generation of the Houdini Swap platform, and what it will be is a almost like a super aggregation layer. It will bring in all of the best and the very best cross chain solutions into one interface, and one of those will be THORChain, of course, and we'll be celebrating that. And what it will enable is any token on any chain to any token on any chain. That's the vision. So we want to enable, or we will be enabling, the ability to go from Thor to with on Solana, or rather the other way around, most likely with on Solana into Ruin or whatever other token a user may select. So that's the vision. That's what we're heading towards. That product is coming out on July 7th, 07/07/24. We've memed the date and we've been getting tons of support and recognition about it. So it's a really exciting time for the project and expanding its use case from privacy to cross-chain aggregation.
Awesome. So like, yeah, let's just like learn a little bit more about exactly what you guys are releasing. So like, what's the difference between V2 and V3? Is it just the expansion of the liquidity sources, or is it like, I mean, are you just adding more routes, or is it like, a total revamp of like the front end as well, or just like support like shipping it out to different front ends to also supply the products to users, or like what exactly is the evolution between V2 and V3 look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's a little bit of A, little bit of B. So we are revamping the front end. We're doing some pretty creative things. Since we are expanding the amount of tokens that we'll be listing, we're going from about 90 to well over 4,000. We've been tackling some really big challenges. I don't know how well versed you are on the different bridges and different ways to preview tokens, for example. Like it's a really big challenge when you have so many tokens listed to be able to display them all and let the user find them really easily. So we've got some pretty cool solutions there. We're taking an approach kind of like Google, where it's this search bar interface, and we've put in a sickening amount of logic behind the search bar so that users, when they start to search, what they're looking for will actually appear right away and it'll be instant. So even from the time that you search, like, if you put in the letter U, it'll, based on a bunch of different parameters, it'll give you like USDT on ETH because that's the most common selection. Or if you type in, whatever, if you type in U and then space base, it'll start showing you USDT on base, or whatever. So yeah, we're solving a lot of really complex challenges on the front end. So there will be a revamp of the front end. And then at the same time, we're adding a ton of new routes and new aggregation sources. That's the biggest one. Historically, we've mainly relied on what are called non-custodial exchanges. So these are folks like ChangeWeeze and ChangeNow, and there's hundreds and hundreds of others. And we've been curating the best of the best and the most reliable and the most trustworthy and secure, and presenting those to the users. But with V3, we're now expanding to permissionless routes, so like THORChain, and a couple others that we'll be bringing into the mix to allow for a more widespread token selection. And then the last thing is, not only are we bringing in those routes, but we're also adding in some logic so that you can carry on messages forward past the bridge. So if a user wants to bridge from, let's say, uh, Bitcoin to ETH, we're adding in additional logic so that you can go from Bitcoin to ETH and then ETH to Uniswap and then actually swap into any token. So rather than users having to bridge on one place and then swap into the next, it's all duct taped together into one, that you can go from Bitcoin to lock token directly, permissionless.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to unpack there, but just off the last thing that you were saying, like we kind of arrived at the same like architecture for that, where THORChain mostly facilitates like long tail, short tail to short tail, where it's like it does Bitcoin to ETH, and we don't have a liquidity pool for everything. But we also came
Mm-hmm.
to like the realization that yeah, just tapping into other dexes is usually going to provide just the best experience for the user, and that's what's really going to make people use THORChain as like the top layer between just switching between the short tail assets, and then you can utilize dexes on other chains for the long tails. That's why like aggregators that are building on top of THORChain, a lot of them use the DEX aggregation functionality that's built in. That just it swaps Bitcoin to ETH, and then it puts that ETH into a into like Uniswap or Kyber or whatever, and
Yeah.
does another swap on the other end. So it's like sounds like you guys are doing something similar where you're just utilizing that aggregation functionality, which is like it's that's the way everything's going to go eventually. I think just because like everything will eventually migrate to decentralized roots because really the only like infinitely scalable, sensor resistant way to really build this space, and exchanges will eventually migrate to that. But yeah, I mean, I feel like just that whole aggregation portion is just like, I mean, it's a very hard problem to solve.
Hmm.
But just like linking all the dexes together really is the way that things are going to be going over the next couple of years,
Yeah,
rather than like this more centralized sources like Changely and Change Now, which definitely like have their uses, but at the end of the day, they're
totally.
uh, restricted by them actually being like a centralized company with their own liquidity.
Totally, totally. Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, like just even I think in the future, we're gonna look back at this period where you had so many different bridges and cross-chain swaps and atomic swaps and then DEX interactions as such a such a prehistoric moment in DeFi, right? Like when you think of crypto, and there's obviously very close analogies to early days of uh, a fiat architecture, and you compare the fiat architecture to the crypto architecture, like if I want to swap or exchange USD into euros, right? I don't care about the clearinghouse that it runs through or the actual mechanism or the trading desk that's accepting my USD and converting it into euros and how it lands in my account. Like all of these things are back end. And what we believe is that in the future, it'll just be like go from any token on any chain to any token on any chain. And all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes is kind of irrelevant. It's just like from a user experience perspective, that's all they want. Like they just want to be able to go from whiff to rune, and they don't really care how they do that as long as it's efficient and reliable. And so that's the kind of future that we want to enable. We always take a user experience perspective first and then apply that to the front end, and what THORChain is doing and what your vision is and how you communicate about cross-chain interactions. We couldn't be more aligned in every sense of the word. Like totally agree that just yeah, what you guys are building has been a massive leap forward in allowing us to enable this UX.
So when you're thinking about Houdini Swap, do you think of it more as the front end, or do you see it evolving more into like an aggregator service that other front ends use? Because there's kind of the two different approaches that we've
Yeah.
seen, where it's like trying to build the brand that is the front end that gets people there, or you just aggregate liquidity sources and figure out the best UX for developers to then offer that to other businesses. So you're basically like have the choice of being like a B2B like aggregator, or like the B2C front end where you're actually the destination for the user. And we've seen some like vertically integrated approaches with that, like Uniswap, where they have liquidity source in the back end, but then they
Hmm.
also have the front end and the wallet that they built out. And then there's plenty of others that have just like more like the 1 inch type model, where they've really just gone for the aggregator backend, and then they just plug in everywhere basically.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Great question. I'll give you a story to answer that one. I think, well, first part, I think it's chicken and egg. It really, which one comes first is hard to say, but I'll give you a story on that. On that note, is when we were very early days, we were very focused on B2B integration. So how can we plug in our aggregator into other sources? And so we had a conversation really early on. I don't think it matters. The name, it was Fireblocks, like that very large wallet infrastructure company, and we presented our solution and we explained how we achieve privacy, and they were like, "Guys, this is amazing. What you guys are doing is incredible, but I can't bring Houdini Swap to Bank of New York Mellon, who's one of our customers. It'll just never fly. Like your guys' brand and use case is just it's just not there for us now. So we're out." And we took that back and we were like, okay, you know what? We probably need to build a brand before we can get these major integrations. Fast forward to, a few months ago, we were having a call with Consensus, and we were like, hey, we've got this amazing front end, we've got this cool brand, Houdini Swap, and they're like, Houdini Swap. We love Houdini Swap. Yeah, we're very interested in exploring how it, how it could integrate into our ecosystem. And so it's like the evolution that comes with having this front end that's available for people to use and people to access just brings so much more authority and assurance that what we're offering to a B2B solution is just so much more robust. So I think it starts with demonstrating adoption and demonstrating demand on the front end, and then what follows thereafter are larger players looking to integrate your aggregator uh, into their dApps.
Yeah, interesting. It's kind of like the opposite approach that THORChain has taken, where it's like we, as like the THORChain core devs, really just focus on just hardcore, just backend stuff, just all,
Hmm.
just making sure that the system is like ultra secure, that it works, adding roots and new features to it, and then not even thinking about front end at all, just outsourcing that completely. And well, I guess it's different because we need to secure liquidity, and you guys just really need to figure out a way to aggregate and provide to the user. So it is kind of
Hmm.
like a different problem to solve. They need to be removed just in terms of like compliance and regulation. Having the permissionless backend versus the front end, which really ultimately needs to be some more centralized than the backend ever would be in
Sure,
any situation, right? So
sure. Yeah.
okay, so that leads me to a question that I was thinking of. So when you say you're like a compliant privacy protocol, what does that actually mean? I have no idea what that means when you say like it's a compliant privacy
Yeah,
protocol.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So on the privacy side, since day one, we've taken really extreme measures to make sure that it's a horrible solution for criminals. And so what that means is, first of all, we don't have access to user funds at any point in the transaction. Same with on the not on the permissionless side, but we'll stick to the privacy side. We don't have any interaction with user funds. Like we can't even touch them if we wanted to, because what we do is we just route traffic to various non-custodial exchanges, almost like an affiliate. But part of our compliance initiatives and why we demonstrate that we're compliant is that every exchange that we work with has back-end AML processes, anti-money laundering processes, scanning each transaction. So the architecture that we have on the privacy side is uh, for every transaction, a deposit address is generated, and the user will send funds into that deposit address. That deposit address is generated by the exchange that's providing the liquidity. Inside of that deposit address requires two confirmations. The first is a confirmation that the transaction has arrived on the blockchain. So let's say the user is sending in ETH. There's a confirmation that the ETH has landed, but the second confirmation is a confirmation that the source of funds is not tied to any criminal activity or any sanctioned wallet or anything like that. So it'll be a Chainalysis or an Elliptic or whoever else that the vendor is using or that the exchange is using as a vendor to scan that transaction, make sure that it's from a clean source. We also taken some other measures, like we block sanctioned countries, sanctioned IP addresses from using our front end, and we also cap transactions at $50,000 to ensure that if there's ever some sort of like large scale hack or whatever, no one user could just funnel criminal proceeds through our aggregator, because it's just super inefficient to have for a criminal to use a platform that caps transactions at 50,000. Like they're always trying to move as much as quickly as possible. So when we say compliant, it's the initiatives that we have to diligence our exchange partners and also just go above and beyond to make sure that criminals cannot interact with our platform.
Yeah, that 100% makes sense. And as like the front end, you're the most exposed to that kind of risk because as the front end, like it needs to be a more compliant approach like this because you're the ones that are ultimately like choosing what user to serve, where like the protocol can't going through THORChain, it can't pick and choose what addresses it could accept you
For
know,
sure. For
Bitcoin
sure.
from or something like that. But at the end of the day, like the front end is the one that ultimately serves the user. So I mean that's kind of like where things have landed these days. It's just like the front end is kind of responsible for the users that it uh, chooses to serve, but then the back end is still permissionless. So it is kind of interesting, like how we've landed there. I'm definitely glad that we still have these permissionless backends that anyone can use, but then we have that extra layer on top for just protection against that kind of activity.
For sure. For sure. I mean, look, like we want to be around for the long run, and I think it's really, as much as theoretically we'd love to just have open access, permissionless, no limit, infinitely scalable on the front end, it's just not it's not the approach that the world is going towards, or at least the like regulatory landscape. And so what we want to do is just adapt and make sure that when we have calls with our legal team and with compliance officers and all these different sources, we want to make sure that we are at least above average when it comes to compliance, because there's just very little guidance out there and rules that we have, like there's no strict rules that we can follow, so we just look to be slightly ahead of best practices, and that's a really good place for us. But yeah, there's I too am very glad that there are both types of entry points for users, both the permissionless backend and the permissioned simple UX front end.
Also, just looking at your numbers, like it's actually impressive how you have that much volume and you have a max swap size of like 50K.
Yeah,
Like that's actually kind of
totally.
crazy. I'm looking at your site on your site. It's like 520 million in swap volume.
Yeah,
Um, and if with 50K max size, that's actually pretty large. Like we see some pretty big trades come through THORChain, which like
yeah.
it definitely makes up a lot of volume. Now there's not a lot of
Hmm.
smaller swaps too, but if you're restricting the max size, like I mean, especially in crypto, most activity comes from just a couple whale users and
Totally.
deposits and things like that. So when you kind of like forcibly break that up, that actually is like pretty nice. And how are you able to like build that from zero? Like, I mean, just as your guys' own story, like how did that kind of come up in the rise of your guys' interface, and how did you actually like get that much activity come into your platform?
Yeah, yeah. I wish there was just one silver bullet that was like, we did this this one thing got us all of our users, but it's a story of of just drudgery, of brick by brick. We always say, like, how do you move a mountain? If you have a mountain in one place and you need to move it to another place, how do you do that? The answer is just one brick at a time or one stone at a time. We just pick up one stone, move it to the next place, and then you look behind and there's a mountain behind you. We've had a couple really good, like partnering with folks like you and partnering with other uh, just really professional and intelligent types of organizations has been a huge help for sure. Um, but like our story is really just product focused. We really like the conversations that we have internally are not about what new features to add and how do we, how do we add this feature and how do we add that feature. Oftentimes the most heated arguments that we have as a team or debates are, what do we remove? Like we're always trying to remove features from our front end. We're always trying to simplify, less, less settings, less noise, and just really keep it down to the core focus of just achieving transactional privacy and now achieving cross-chain interoperability. And so it's been product-led growth for sure. People, once they try our platform, they just keep coming back and they love it. And we get tons of positive feedback about it. So that's been one. And then the other has just been through partnerships with whether it's token ecosystems where we enable privacy for them, or it's been liquidity sources or other folks like that. We've just been, doing a lot of the small things well now for a bunch of years, and it's starting to really add up.
Yeah, I mean, your take stuff out approach definitely jives with what you're saying with the uh, just a search bar as the
Yeah,
actual swap interface. Like I feel like every DEX, they've kind of all come to the same spot where there's
yeah,
like giant lists of tokens and
yeah,
it's impossible to sort through them all. And nor do you
yeah,
care about 99% of them, or
totally.
even closer to 100% than that. Like it does seem like you guys really care about just like simplifying user experience, and that's what's really necessary for the front ends is to be a little experimental, but you really have to be user focused when you're the front end because like ultimately they're choosing to do business with you and they could go somewhere else if they wanted to, but they choose to come to you because they know you care about the experience. So that's I mean that's awesome that you guys were able to build a brand in that way. And like V3 sounds like it's going to be pretty cool with its with a new approach. I haven't seen or used a dex that's like that yet, so I'm
Mhm.
definitely keen to try that out once it goes live.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be really interesting, and I do like we have seen some of our design aesthetics appear in different places, like here and there, but I think that this search bar will really like change the way people create these lists of tokens because it's really complicated. And one I'll just share one small thing on that on the token list just while we're mentioning it. We have a lot of experience on how users interact with token lists. And the reason is because in our privacy routing, we don't require a wallet connect. So users just send funds into a deposit address. Now, what the outcome of that is that we've seen every possible way that a user can mess up that deposit address interaction. So for example, a user will think that they're sending ETH on ARB when really they're sending ETH on ETH, right? Or a user will be looking for USDT and accidentally click USDC. And so because we didn't have that guaranteed authentication from the wallet through a wallet connect, we've been able to really understand how users look for tokens and how they think about tokens and just like the how having less is more when it comes to just throwing a dart at the token you're looking for, right? People don't just scroll through the list being like, "Oh, what token should I buy today on Uniswap?" Right? Like maybe they do that on CoinMarketCap, but they certainly don't do that on swap platforms. So users come in with intent. They're looking for one token. How can we make it as easy as possible for them to find that one token and execute the swap? And that's it.
Yeah. And I have another question for you about just like the different routes that people do. It's like, do you see most of your activity going through certain routes, or is it more like, long tail stuff, or is it just like people swapping major coins? Or is it more like privacy focused where you see like a lot of Monero trades, or like what kind of routes do you see users doing, or is it kind of all over the place?
Yeah, in the early days, 90% of transactions were ETH to ETH with the privacy routing. So it was users either looking to fund new wallets, send payroll, send payments to KOLs, like whatever it was just ETH to ETH privacy routing. As we've expanded, we've started to see um, more and more uh, uh, just mainnet token to mainnet token. And so people are coming to us as a bridge, especially to Solana, especially to Ton. Ton is really complex to get to. We see, yeah, we see quite a bit of volume also to Bitcoin as well, which is part of the reason why we're so excited to be working with THORChain. And um, so it's a mixed bag now. Like there is a very wide variety of tokens that are swapped on any given day, and oftentimes it does follow the meta of the day. Like when Solana meme coins were on the rise, we saw a lot more Solana volume, and we still do than we did 4 months ago. Base chain, same thing. 2 months ago, there's a ton of base chain volume, but so now it's very widely mixed, but still ETH to ETH transactions make up a very large percent, but under 50 nowadays.
Yeah, cool. I mean, the next change that we're thinking about adding being Solana, and also considering Ton, those are very validating to hear,
Yeah.
especially as like how much activity is on those chains and how
Hmm.
difficult it is to get on and off. Solana a little less so nowadays, but especially Ton, definitely like an undertapped ecosystem that not
Totally.
a lot of they're like basically no bridges serve that route. So that's all stuff that we're hopefully looking to get over the next number of months.
Yeah. 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 And the problem is it's just going to get like the meta shifts pretty quickly, right? And so by the time everyone catches up to finding the right bridge source, it's already moved on to the next. So like there's so many really promising L1s and L2s launching over the, especially ones that have been delayed waiting for the next bull market. We think it's gonna get a lot, it's gonna get even worse from a user's experience because everyone has their own decks and everyone has their own bridge. And so we're just yeah, the more routes that THORChain could enable, the better user experience it'll be for our users and the more volume we could send to your we could send through your routing.
Yeah, I mean, what you were just saying, just all a lot of volume just being flavor of the day. I think that's so true, and also why we've taken such a slow approach on
Yeah,
adding new chains because
yeah,
it's impossible to add every chain, and it's because there's just more scalability concerns. The more chains you add, the more kind of effort is taken to maintain those chains,
yeah,
and it just compounds over time. So
yeah,
adding a flavor of the day is just not viable, not really possible. So you really need to be picky and choosy about which chains to add when you can't just add everything. Like you can't be you could be a Coinbase and you could run you can just run a node for everything and then you just have like your centralized service. It's all just a spreadsheet. So it's like
yeah,
much more
yeah,
simple to do that as like
yeah,
a
yeah,
decentralized liquidity provider. Like you you really need to uh, be careful about what you add to the network because there's like broad implications to the actual like chain itself, like the way that we
for
do
sure,
things.
for
So
sure.
yeah, it's like taken pretty heavily on like what to add because there's just so much that it adds to the network. But hopefully that it can we can make the right choices there and be adaptable and you know add things that people really want to see. But it's good to get feedback from like guys like
Yeah,
you that really interact with the user on that level and like see where not just where the trends are but like really where the volume is because the biggest thing that like we want is just bringing volume that's sustainable that drives fees that pays liquidity providers and the node
yeah,
operators and all the
yeah,
people in the network. So it's like
yeah. And
it's a
yeah,
difficult problem to
exactly.
solve.
Exactly. And from our perspective, diversity isn't necessarily better. Like we would way rather if we were if we controlled the dev schedule of THORChain, we would way rather see just more and more effort to improve speed and transactional costs and security of the network when it comes to native Bitcoin transactions and maybe native Rune transactions, which are already very good. But like for us, we'd rather find the THORChain of Ton ecosystem and work with them to support Ton and like have everyone focused on just creating the best possible flows and best possible routing for their core competencies. Now, THORChain is a little bit different, being around for so long, and you have like such an incredible development community. So I have full faith and effort that when you do get to Solana and when you do get to Ton, it will be as amazing as the rest of them. But from our perspective, again, it's just like when people develop those domain expertise, they're very hard to replicate, and that's a huge barrier or a moat rather around your core competencies and your value proposition. So like we love THORChain because of its amazing like native Bitcoin cross-chain swaps, right? And we would just love to see like faster latency and lower fees and just be able to send more and more volume through your routing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're working on all those things simultaneously. So, like right
Of
now,
course.
like a lot of the things with Bitcoin, like actually being slow. First off, is just like the native chain itself being quite slow, and you have to wait
Yeah,
for
yeah,
confirmations to happen.
totally.
And then other things are just it's all just security things on our end where we artificially delay sending out transactions to ensure that there is like no issues going on. And
Yeah,
it's saved, it's definitely saved us a couple times in the past where we've had the ability to the nodes have had the ability to react to things that are going on the network before something happens. So over time those things will all trend down, and then eventually you just get this native swap experience that's super fast and
yeah,
still just as secure. Um, so like that, it's all something that we're working on.
Yeah.
Um, so the other thing that that I wanted to ask you guys just about like the integration with THORChain, like how exactly that works. I think you explained it to me a little while ago, but like you want to go through for everybody, like how exactly you're using THORChain liquidity?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So the conversation started originally actually because of the memoless feature that was going to be coming out sooner rather than later. We still think that's a really, really innovative feature to offer people the ability to transact without requiring a wallet connect, and that's what memoless enables. There's a huge community of people who just do not want to connect their wallet to anything, and the ability to offer that routing is very, very attractive. And so we were really excited to be the first to provide that feature to our user base. And when that comes out, that will be like absolutely highlighted in the utmost degree. But that's how the conversation started. Where we are now is we are integrating THORChain. At first, we're going to be integrating it through SwapKit. So through that, basically a layer ahead through THORSwap. THORSwap has access to all of THORChain routing, and we're going to make sure that the routing works perfectly through that SDK. In the future, we're going to like in the very near future, we're going to be plugging in directly into the THORChain nodes and directly on chain into your liquidity pools to offer the user just lowest cost optionality directly into THORChain. So yeah, we'll be previewing all of the major routes that THORChain offers inside of our aggregation and offering it to our users.
Awesome. Yeah, SwapKit's a great choice to start out on that, especially because they have the aggregator already built in. So they have all the THORChain routes already enabled.
Yeah,
And that's with the DEX aggregator that they already built in the back end. So it also connects to, probably a dozen different DEXs on Ethereum, on Avalanche, I think a couple on Binance Smart Chain. So you get both the long tail and you get the best short tail experience as well. So it's kind of like an all-in-one package. Yeah, shout out to the THORSwap guys,
for
the
sure.
developers of
Big time.
SwapKit. And they're very similar to you guys as well, where they've also started out as a front end and now taking more of the aggregator approach. So yeah, I think using their product is just like a super smart idea. But then also, yeah, going direct to THORChain, that's just the way to make it the cheapest possible
Yeah.
way to offer any of those routes to your users.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to start with offering, again, any token, any chain. We're going to aggregate the aggregators when possible. We're going to connect into the bridges when needed. And then we're going to continue to climb the ladder and start going directly into the sources. But the first goal is any token, any chain. And yeah, it might be a couple basis points more, but we're totally comfortable and honestly thrilled to be working with teams like THORSwap and their SDK SwapKit to make available those short tail and long tail assets.
So, like speaking of revenue and stuff, are you guys collecting? You guys collecting fees, or like what exactly is your revenue model, and like also how are you powering that with THORChain?
Yeah, on the privacy routing, we earn a commission from the exchanges we work with, and so they charge whatever they charge. We don't add any markup, and then we just get a cutback. We have a unique deal with each of them to to just uh, to just generate revenue, and we use that revenue to buy back our token and then emit those bought back tokens to our stakers. And so we're buying back right now uh, on the privacy routing side, we're buying back something like 70,000 a week in tokens directly on the chart. With this new architecture, we will be creating almost like broker accounts kind of thing. You can think of it like that, where we will be adding a small front end markup. But same idea. All of the revenues that are generated from these various aggregators get passed back to the community in the form of buybacks to fund the staking program, and then emitted to the stakers, to our long term wizards, as we call them. And so THORChain enables that because SwapKit enables that right now because SwapKit has that functionality built in, so it's very easy to implement that.
Awesome. So you guys don't even collect any fees at all for the team. Like, how exactly are you guys funded if that happens.
No, we do. It's not 100% of fees
Okay.
that are used to buy back token, but it's it's the vast majority of them, and it's been a really so like we've got feedback before that the team should be collecting more volume, but we do feel very strongly that the more that the community wins, the more everyone wins. And we've always taken a community first approach and just making sure that we have enough to fund salary and payroll and the basic stuff like that, but the rest goes to the community.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say it's pretty important to balance that. Like in our opinion, it's like we really want to see just a sustainable ecosystem
For
where,
sure.
look, everyone gets paid. Like liquidity providers get paid, the people who run the networks get paid, the front ends are able to fund their teams, and also like everyone has their own costs that are associated with running these businesses. So like making sure that you guys are taken care of too. And then that's like something that we focused on a lot at THORChain is just making sure that the tools are available to uh, drive revenue towards the front ends who are
Yeah.
actually offering the swaps, because that's really what drives organic volume is real users making the swaps. So making it easy decision for the front ends to be like, yeah, well, we can make a ton of money offering this service, which is a useful service to users, and also fund our team and buy back tokens or whatever they want to do with that income. Like we want to make it as easy as possible to make that decision very simple for you guys. So
Yeah.
if there's ever like any kind of functionality or like features that you think like THORChain could use that just makes your life easier. Obviously, I know memolist is a big one that we've kind of like we do want to see it, but it's just kind of been just like pushed back at this point. But
Yep.
I'm sure we'll get there eventually. But uh, yeah, if there's anything that like makes your guys' life easier, just as a team, and just would make the product even better for your users, then make sure you let us know so that way we can make sure we're focusing on the right things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We keep a close eye on the development Discord, and yeah, we're very we're very vocal in our suggestions, but in a positive way. Like we just want to we think that the more that the better THORChain can be from our perspective, the better it can be from everyone's perspective for the most part. Like obviously we have our own our own agendas, but I think that we have a good voice of or at least we have a good lens on features and products that should be added. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
If you were to add a chain tomorrow, what would it be? Solana?
Yeah, probably. Probably. There's no native Solana Bitcoin bridge right now, which I think is just like a missed opportunity. I think the more native Bitcoin to whatever else, the better for the entire ecosystem. Like there's such a huge community of Bitcoin holders who don't touch DeFi or who keep their money on exchanges or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I would probably go where the volume is right now, Solana, and go Bitcoin and make sure that that Bitcoin Solana route works really well.
Awesome. I can open up to a couple questions here in the last couple minutes of the space, and people want to request. I think there's a couple people that have already requested. So if anyone wants to like come and ask the Houdini team a question, or is about pretty much anything, we're always here to answer some stuff.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions related to this integrate, like to working with our collaboration with THORChain and how we're benefiting the THORChain community, but also anything about our launch on 07/07/24 or about our privacy routing or whatever it may be. Happy to answer questions. The thing is, we have a community space every Monday. We call it Magic Monday. I think you've been on it actually, and um, we're very like one of the things we preach constantly is that for a privacy project we aim to be as transparent as humanly possible, and so we used to open up the floor to questions and we used to get a couple questions, but as the project has evolved and as people have seen all of the ways that we communicate our messaging and answer questions instantly in the main chats, questions have kind of stopped when it comes to AMAs because people are just really well informed. Like people, people just generally know what's going on within our community. So if there's anyone in the THORChain community listening in that wants to get a different perspective, happy to answer. But I know I see a bunch of familiar faces in this chat, so I'm not surprised to see
Yeah,
tons of hands
I've
go
seen the
up.
same phenomenon. Like when we did spaces like really often. I've kind of tailed off a little bit recently, But when we did them super often, it's like, yeah, a lot of the same people just coming in and hanging out, and they already know what's happening. Where it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's not
yeah,
really
yeah.
much to ask. But yeah, we got a couple people in here. Rick Rich, what's up? You there? All right, let's go to Cipher Cat. You can just chime in if you're on the stage. What's up?
I'm here. How's it going, guys?
Good, good. How you doing?
Can't complain. Excited about Lock, that's for sure.
Thank you, thank you. How can we help? You got any questions?
Now, like you said, everything's answered in the TG, and
Cool. Coming to say hi.
Sweet, man. Thanks for coming up. Cipher Cat, you there?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so wait. Are you saying in the midst of all the inflationary stuff, we got someone with something that's just a limited supply? Houdini?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. We're our staking program does not the rewards for the staking program do not come from a rewards wallet that's outside of supply. I think that's a really, really important factor worth highlighting, that all of the rewards for the stakers come from uh, from existing supply on the market. So from existing AMM supply that just gets bought up and then emitted out. It's a fully funded deflationary program.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm looking this up. That's kind of all I wanted to know because like I keep getting a lot of shilling when it comes to like staking and stuff, but it's all inflationary and it's like
Yeah.
I think that the whole narrative is shifting to deflationary for sure. Like
I mean,
limited supply.
as it should, right? Like if you think about what inflationary staking is, it's just like it can be really toxic to a project because it's just this ticking time bomb, right? You've got this huge mass of rewards that will eventually come into the market via the stakers. And once their time limits expire, it can just get really destructive. So completely agree there. One of the
What
other things that are interesting about our program, just while we're on the topic, and I think it's something that a lot of projects can learn from, is that when you have a kind of like a source of revenues or of constant buybacks, when the dollar amount is relatively fixed, it can act as a really good pressure release valve for downward token pressure or a really good incentive for upward token pressure. So for example, if you have a token that's, sitting at a buck and you're constantly buying back like $10,000 worth of token, just for example, you're getting, 10 tokens you're getting 100 tokens each time you spend 10,000, right? But if the token dips down suddenly to 50 cents, you're now getting 200 tokens, and so the APY it explodes when the token price dips down. So more people then channel into the staking program, and then the token price should eventually get back to equilibrium. Right now, we're at like 40% or 50%. I don't even remember what we're at this past week, but we're at like 40-50% APY. So we're in that like pressure release valve moment where the token is a little bit lower than what you'd expect for an APY. Maybe like 20% is more common, or 15%. But there's some really interesting dynamics when you have fully funded programs.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because that's something that we've been talking about in the THORChain community as well. There's an ADR, so like people can submit proposals for architecture design changes to THORChain, and it's something being discussed right now. Just doing basically what you said, where it's just a buyback and burn rune based on swap volume. So it's like something that people are considering and just like thinking around whether exactly what shape that takes, how much to buy back and burn, or it's exactly like how that functions. So like that's something that's just happening right now in our own community. So kind of interesting to hear you guys talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to someone recently where we kind of ran into like a logical problem with the whole inflationary thing because I think the reason for inflation is you want to retain users. So like, and I think that worked for a while, but now people are getting rewards from like literally everywhere, and it's all money that's coming out of the sky. So now it's like, it's not really like this. It's kind of changed now, where it's like there's not, it doesn't have the same shine that it used to have. And so like I'm seeing these staking protocols where it's like, I think people are aware that it's inflationary, so they get the yield and then they dump it on the market because they don't actually have to lock in. Because before it used to be, okay, well, if I'm going to stay here and collect this inflation, then I'm gonna stay stagnant. But then what you have is someone who's not participating in your network. So you're paying someone inflation in the hopes that they'll do something because that they're being debased. But if they don't do that because they're basically being told not to do anything in order to earn the inflation, then you're hoping that the rest of the network is subsidizing for the people who are hodling, which I think used to work. But yeah, I think that the next step is going to be
just as you were wrapping up. But
yeah,
go
can you
ahead.
hear me now?
I still hear.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
you're getting glitched out. Okay.
But yeah, I think the next step is just going to be kind of going back to basics, basically, like buybacks for sure, but it just coming from a place of like real economic like velocity,
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree.
Also, one thing that came to mind while you guys are talking about that, I'm not sure what dexes you're listed on. I'm assuming like Uniswap and some of the other ones, but if you guys need assistance like getting listed on THORChain, like that's something that we could pretty easily help you guys with. If you needed any additional liquidity sources, or if you wanted to move off Uniswap or do whatever, THORChain's here to to be a place to swap. So if you need any help getting it on there, then for sure just like let the team know. He has hopped off the stage.
THORChain kind of has like an interesting approach to it. I was looking into that, but you guys tend to have like higher yields than a lot of these other staking methods. Which is really interesting because there's a lot of staking that pays out like 3%. You guys pay a really high yield. I think that does some of that come from just the velocity that you guys provide, like on the.
Yeah. So which staking are you talking about? Running a node, providing liquidity, savers, or like anything?
Yeah. So providing liquidity, I think, because I was looking at that option of like providing liquidity on like two different sides.
Yeah, providing two-sided liquidity is interesting. So like I would take any number that's with a grain of salt, because looking at and I've said this like many times in spaces before, so it's like maybe some people already understand this, but when you provide two-sided liquidity in an AMM and you're looking at an APY figure, you're basically just looking at the past price performance over a given amount of time, because you're really looking at like how much in fees are you earning minus impermanent loss. And impermanent loss, you can't really like you can measure the fees over a given amount of time, but you can't really measure the amount of impermanent loss that's going to take place at any given time, because that's really just a function of the prices of the two assets that you're providing. So it's like, while APYs can be like a useful like stick your finger to the wind gauge on like how much you're earning, they definitely should not be taken as like a gospel, like, oh, you're earning 20% on these two assets, because you might be earning 20%, but there's also impermanent loss, which is theoretically unbounded. Like you could many people have gotten screwed by impermanent loss. So it's like, as a liquidity provider, you need to make sure like you understand like what the APY actually is measuring, and like how to work that in with your own personal risk tolerance and just understanding and providing liquidity. Because it's not the same as if you provide one asset, there's no impermanent loss. If you provide two assets, you have gains and you have losses as well. So it's like figuring out how to reconcile those two figures is like a challenge I think a lot of liquidity providers go through.
Is like dual-sided liquidity kind of like, so if you're to be like an LP, because like I've been trying to do this, I'm trying to be getting my feet wet on this kind of concept, right? But does it help if you're kind of bullish on both things? Like you don't really care like how much of either side you actually end up holding because you're bullish on both things? Like, does that kind of help with the whole impermanent loss kind of
Yes,
aspect?
yeah,
Or?
100%. Like you need to be bullish on both assets, and the reason that is because when one asset goes up, you're selling it for the other one. So if you don't care whether you end up with more Bitcoin or more Rune, then yeah, being a liquidity provider is a great way to just earn fees and just be bullish on both assets. And if Bitcoin goes way up, then you end up with way more Rune. If Rune goes way up, you end up with way more Bitcoin. So you really do need to be bullish on both assets when you're providing two-sided liquidity. But that's also why we have other LP mechanisms like savers, where you can earn single-sided liquidity, like on Bitcoin, for example, uh, just to be like a simpler product that's usable by anybody that just like wants to earn a yield on their native assets. Because providing liquidity is much more complex because there's mechanisms at play that people don't really fully understand before diving in. But if you're bullish on both assets that you're providing in an AMM, that's really where you want to be, because you're always buying one asset and selling the other. So if you're bullish on both, then you really can't lose. I wouldn't say you can't lose, but you're much less likely to be disappointed with the result.
And this is kind of where it's interesting about buybacks, because like I'm kind of working on my own stuff, and like I think that like what I've been coming to discover is that like that's like rewards tokens, this whole concept of buybacks, treating it like that, have it's like it kind of gains this kind of resilience, because even if your coin were to like somehow drop in value, you can just kind of keep building around it and keep buying back, and then finding new people who are actually like loyal and bullish long term. And it's like you're building slowly, gradually, that kind of rigid nature of your brand and everything that you're doing. So it's like in the beginning, of course, it always starts off with you've only got a few people who are loyal, who are going to be long term. But eventually, like if you're consistent enough, I think that it does result in good things long term. It's just about consistency and value add and all that kind of stuff, and trying to open up those revenue streams in many ways. But yeah, I think in the end it's pretty cool how we can kind of create circular economics around basically anything. It's like that's the world we live in now. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I would just add that a lot of people, I see a lot of devs and projects get this wrong, in my view. And where I think people lose track and lose sight of is, at the end of the day, it really does stem from product in a lot of cases, right? Like you can have the greatest tokenomics in the world, but without, and I'm talking utility projects, not just meme coins. For utility projects, you can have the greatest tokenomics in the world, but if you don't have a product that people love and people return back to, whether it is a back end like THORChain or a front end like Houdini Swap, none of that really matters. And so, as much time and effort as needs to be spent on these like really unique incentivization and circular economy structures, the vast majority of time still needs to be spent on the product. Can't lose sight of that, because that's really what drives everything. At least in our experience, that's what we've seen.
Just got up two last speakers here that we can go through, unless you have a hard stop and need to head out. But you
I
guys
have
go
a couple
for
more
two?
minutes. I'm a little bit late for my next call, but that's fine.
Okay. Let's do one last question then for Belle. Hey.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, big fans of Houdini Swap and also THORChain. I actually have a ton of THORChains, and I just had a quick question. Love what you guys are building. But I bought some tokens forever ago, a couple years ago, and I was unaware the migration occurred. I've been trying to migrate for the THORChain, but I have not been able to. Is there anyone out there that can help with that? Like, I'm willing to do whatever. I'm just trying to figure out how to migrate these.
I mean, I hate to be the one to say anything to you, but the bridge was closed like I think about like over a year ago. I think it started the closure like 2 years ago, and it's been completely deprecated for over a year. So I'm sorry, I don't think that there's anyone that can do anything. All the centralized exchanges had to move over, and they migrated like their own liquidity. So with the closure, like the Binance Beacon chain, there really isn't anything that anyone can do to move
So
your tokens over.
completely impossible. Okay. Damn. All right.
Sorry.
Thanks. Thanks for the info, guys.
No worries. Sorry. Well, Houdini, thanks for coming on, guys, and on the 7th of July. Be super cool to see your guys' new product, and for sure let us know. We'll make sure to blast all that stuff out and get it out to the community.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Awesome, guys. Well, have a good one. See you later.